Welcome, folks. We'll just hold a moment while people filter in from the waiting room. Excellent, excellent. The participant number is rapidly rising. Thank you for joining us. All right. Well, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're calling in from. Welcome to our second webinar for the Global Meetings Industry Day. This is the first of two EIC Apex COVID-19 Business Recovery Task Force open house sessions. And for this one, we will be discussing meeting design. I'm Marshall Bradshaw. I'm a member of the EIC staff. And before the session begins, I have some important housekeeping notes for you. First, this presentation is being recorded and will run approximately 1 hour, including some question and answer time at the end. It will also be available afterwards on the EIC YouTube channel. All attendees watching live today will receive CEs, which will appear on your account within 1 week of today. Attendees can listen to the webinar through their computers or by dialing in using the number and passcode provided by the Zoom software. We also welcome you to utilize the closed captioning function. Just click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen, and you will find the link to the live subtitles. If you have questions, you don't have to wait until the end of the presentation to submit them. We encourage you to submit your questions using the question and answer panel, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. Now, it is separate from the chat, but feel free to say hello in the chat before entering your question in the Q&A panel instead. We will answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. And now I will hand it over to the Events Industry Council CEO, Amy Calvert.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you to all of our participants that are joining us from across the globe in all time zones. It's great to be with you today and to be part of this conversation. It's a really important conversation. So EIC, as many of you know, is a federation of organizations that really aim to support the global business events industry and focuses really intently on advocacy, research, professional standards, and professional recognition. And all of these member organizations that you see here are doing fantastic work in all of those areas, as well in the areas of diversity, inclusion, equity, and accessibility. So today's conversation is really going to be centered around, on behalf of the global business events industry and the 26 million professionals that comprise our industry, what can we all do when we're unified to really turn our vision into action? And that is one of the reasons why we decided to form our Equity Task Force. The programming that we've developed over the course of this week in recognition of GMID is really all around hosting generous conversations in terms of advocacy, equity, really helping to support our workforce now more than ever, and really thinking about how do we build back stronger, more committed to our values. And I cannot think of a more incredible and well-suited facilitator to host that conversation than Tammy Routh. Tammy, I've known Tammy for years. She is an individual that really lives her values, has done amazing work on behalf of Marriott Corporation for many, many years, and is really a true partner. And I will just speak to that commitment. I've known it personally, not only through Tammy's amazing work, but through my experience in working collaboratively with Marriott International Partners, particularly in destinations that I worked in Baltimore. You really get the sense that this is a firm that understands their role and their ability to lift up and serve communities when they get engaged beyond that which they do individually. So again, I just want to say thank you to Tammy for your leadership and your friendship over the years and everything you've done personally to embrace that philosophy. And I know that everyone's going to really enjoy this conversation today. We have a fantastic group of panelists and look forward to spending this hour together. Tammy, over to you.
Great. Amy, thank you so much. Those were such kind words. It is really my pleasure and honor to be a part of this panel today. We all have a responsibility for playing our part in creating an industry that eliminates barriers to inclusion and creates one that is diverse and equitable for all. And I think we've all read the research around the most profitable and the most successful teams, companies, organizations are the ones that have the most diverse organizations and the most diverse teams. But in addition to just the profitability and the success, it's also the right thing to do for humanity. And that's why this is such a powerful discussion for us today. And I think we have the right panelists to have that conversation. So allow me to introduce the panel for today. You've already met Amy with EIC, Jason Dunn, who is with the National Coalition of Black Meeting Professionals, Derrick Johnson with Tally Management, Natasha Richards with the IMEX Group, Tina Wehmeir with AMC Institute, Keneisha Williams with Black in Events Network. So that's our panel, and we are now going to get started with the chairs of this very important task force, Tina and Jason. So Tina and Jason, I'm going to tee up the question, and then I'm going to allow the two of you to decide who goes first on this one. But I think it's important for us to set the table here with what is this task force about? And what are we trying to accomplish? What are the focus areas? And how can this group build a framework for instilling a meaningful and a permanent shift to inclusion for our industry? So Tina and Jason, I'm going to have you take that one.
I appreciate that, and thank you. And Tina and I picked straws, and I got the shortest straw, so I had to get to go first. I think from a humanity perspective, last year really brought everybody down to the same level. And what I mean by that is there weren't any people whom could not ignore what we all saw for ourselves as a country and as a nation, and frankly, as a global body. And what the tourism industry has the opportunity to do is to kind of on a micro level influence a macro type of discussion with real metrics that can come together and to lead within a framework that all of our organizations that we represent can then position it to their individual members with metrics and frankly some accountability that we all are at one human. Two, that we all, based on the points that you said, diversity is a part of the future. Three, the demographics are changing and we have to be able to get along in the same room and provide an innovative way to lead our industry. And four, from my perspective, is that as we all begin collectively to kind of see ourselves as one being, accepting our own differences, we lead the globe because our industry, I believe, empowers communities. And if our communities are on the same page, aligned with the passion of the human spirit first, with metrics that hold us all accountable to treat us as such, then I believe that we can move the needle, the moral needle, for the rest of the country. And I think that the four principles that we want to kind of speak to, I'll talk to the two of them and Tina will focus on the other two, are organizational structures. So once we begin to the conversation with the experts in this field that we've assembled, we'll then present this outline to the actual organization within our umbrella groups. And then we'll put together an outline that actually has KPIs that each organization come from within themselves and keep themselves accountable. So it's kind of like a best practices that they'll get to kind of run through and to actually implement within their own individual organizations. Second, a career development path, where we know that per the stats that as demographics are changing, how do we make sure that each person feels like they're a part of the conversation, that they're fully represented on every level? And how do we make sure folks who are actually inside of the conversation now don't feel alienated? So there has to be a cross purposes of first meeting us where we are, number two, leading with data, and number three, putting together an outline that includes everyone as we begin to move the moral compass to diversity, inclusion, and equity, and understanding those differences, but also making sure that everyone is held accountable to ensuring diversity is first and foremost.
Thanks, Jason. And to speak to the other two areas of the framework, we are obviously looking at industry leadership as the third. It's critical. We want to see more diversity in industry leadership in the events arena. it's one of the major, I think, of the four we have, because without the leadership being diverse, our message is a bit lost, I think. And then the second one is the event framework, which we want to definitely have tools that will help these leaders and everyone in our community take this with the metrics and be able to deliver on them. We want a diverse supply chain. We want everything tied together in a format. So I feel like the four focus groups of this task force are really, really critical. I love what Jason said about, last year putting us all on a level playing field. As the Institute for the Association Management Companies, we are the trade association for AMCs. And I've watched in this past year, the AMC community really come together around this. Many of them are hiring individuals. Derrick can speak to this himself as Chief Diversity Officer that's been hired by Tally Management Group. And many of our members across the board at the Institute are hiring for that, so that they're planting that seed, because what we're seeing in the association arena is associations and nonprofits really leaning into this for the first time. And they're reviewing their missions and their visions, and they're deciding whether to revise them and to make them different, and to really accept this as part of the true value and core of the association. And as the AMC community, we can really help direct that when we have people like Derrick and all of the others that in our AMC world are trying to really push this point forward and spread it throughout the nonprofit arena. And I'm just so proud of the work we're doing, and proud of the work this task force is getting ready to accomplish. It's so needed, and it's so critical for us all.
Excellent. Well, on behalf of all of us, we'd like to thank both of you for your leadership and willingness to step up and help guide this. So thank you for that. Keneisha, I think we're going to go to you next. As co-founder of Black in Events Network, you've been working to raise awareness about the importance of diversity in all aspects of the industry, the events industry, including workforce and the supply chain. So could you share with this audience, what are some tangible and immediate ways that organizations and companies can improve equity and inclusion throughout the entire value chain?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tammy. So I'm just going to share a little bit about Black in Events Network to really paint the picture for you here and to answer your question. So as a network, we aim to globally amplify and represent Black professionals working in the events industry because of underrepresentation. So one of our keys that we really take pride in is being an inclusive network. And what that means is we know that we have to do this together in order to achieve diversity and inclusion in the industry. It's not a we versus them deal here, right? So we have professionals who don't identify as Black, but they're part of the network helping to amplify the cause, getting involved and supporting our efforts. Many of these individuals have recognized that there's a problem, so they're learning to help. Some of them are still in the process of learning how they can help, but they just want to be, part of that change. So as a network, we focus on building visibility of Black professionals through our experiences. These are such things as our highlights, our live chats, our events, and most importantly, bringing the conversation to different spaces like here to create the knowledge that our network of experts, owners, students, they do exist. And of course, so much more. And then it's the community that helps others feel like they're part of something, feel like they're being seen, feel like they're being heard, feel like they're being celebrated. So it's really that humanistic touch. And then of course, offering resources to help with career, education, business. So I explain this because the network is a prime example that we're here. So it's not really the excuse of, I don't know where to find Black professionals or suppliers in my area. I'm not sure if they have the right skills. I can't find speakers. The lack of knowledge is really yesterday, and the platforms and the tools are actually present. So for many organizations looking to immediately make improvements, I'm going to explain some key points because it's not only, it doesn't only take action, it takes conscious and committed approach, to making improvements. So the first thing is really to recognize that this is not a trend. It's not a hot topic. It's a lifelong journey that your organization, your leaders, and yourself must be dedicated to. Number two is to know that it's not too late to take a step in the right direction. This is often the conflict or the fear amongst many. I mean, if you are watching these messages right now, it's on your mind, and you know that it's, like Jason mentioned earlier, it's the right thing to do. It's not too late, but also that there isn't more time in delaying moving in the right direction. So again, it's knowing that it's not too late. The next point is to listen to what's happening and make the commitment to make the move. On our network, we recently highlighted 100 Black professionals in events. And the most popular question we received was, well, how did you find so many Black professionals? And you know what? It's listening to people and also doing the research. This onus is really on us. And when you take the time to listen, see what's going on around you, educate yourself, and then you end up learning more and becoming educated and seeing what you're missing out on. So again, this sometimes ends up leaving us in fear and question of, how do I do? What do I do? I want to really stress, do not do this alone. Reach out and ask, how can I help support? Be transparent in your challenges. Currently there are a number of organizations and companies you can partner with who is doing the work geared to diversity and inclusion in events. And I'm going to name a few who you can support directly with your efforts. And I'm going to start with the National Coalition of Black Meetings Professionals, whom have been doing this work for over 30 years, right? So they've been doing the work and, they're present. There's also the Black Event Planners and Meeting Professionals, which is actually founded by Antoine Stegall. So he has a space on Facebook where it's kind of a safe space for Black professionals. There's also the Black Table, which is based in LA, and it's founded by a number of Black professionals also doing the work to raise awareness of Black professionals. Then there's the National Events Council, who actually just launched, I believe it was last year, and they're focused really on BIPOC initiatives. You also have the Event Planners Collective, which is a group of 3 young women from New Jersey, LA, and I believe both of them were in LA, but they started their collective on Clubhouse, and they have raised so much awareness. They have, I believe, over 6,000 members on Clubhouse, and they're doing event-based initiatives. And then, of course, like I mentioned, we have the Black in Events Network, and our pillars are creating community resources and visibility. So my next point to that is to think and write out ways that your organization can sponsor events that are produced by organizations that are working to support diversity and inclusion. The most important thing for a lot of these organizations and businesses that I just named is reach. Reach is very important. Collaborating and amongst other initiatives is powerful, because when we do this together, we kind of raise the awareness and reach corners that, maybe a lot of these organizations can't reach on their own, right? And my next point is to stay the course. Like I mentioned earlier, this is not a trend. I know that there's so many lists. We've gotten used to this list in the industry where we have these trends. We see it almost every year, diversity, inclusion. It's not a trend. We're dealing with real people here, with real feelings. This is their livelihood. Let's not treat it like that anymore. Let's not treat it like a hot topic anymore, okay? And this also ties into, my first point on it's not a we versus them. When we all consciously make the decision to collectively work together because we know that there's a problem in our industry, example, underrepresentation, then we can come together to create solutions like we're doing right now. We may not get it right the first time, but we're going to get there. And it starts with just making that commitment and taking that fear out of what doesn't look familiar out of your mind and moving towards action. And my name is Keneisha and I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Okay, I know I'm supposed to be facilitating, but I took a page of notes just now, just so we're all aware. I think something you said, everything you said was powerful, but also for all of us listening, is that there is no excuse of I don't know where to go to get top talent of Black professionals. I don't know where to get that talent for speakers or content for my meetings. There's no excuse anymore. I think we would all agree. You just gave us all the resources that we need. So thank you so much. That was amazing. We're going to move to Natasha next. And Natasha, I'm going to warn you, this is a very broad question. So I thank you for that. IMEX is such a global organization and with such global reach. So what do you see as some successful global initiatives that have been developed and how that can inspire us to greater action in this space globally?
Thank you, Tammy. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. Forgive me if I sort of step outside to a very broad, being a broad. So the global pandemic is accelerating the blurring of the lines between people, workplaces, and technology. And it is leading to one of the greatest workforce transformations that I think we've ever seen. But at the same time, there's an urgent need to address social injustice, and organizations need to ensure that equity and inclusion and all forms of human diversity define the new normal in the workplace. The combined global health and social crisis continue to deepen pre-existing inequalities, and it really does require urgent action. This new normal, if that's what we're going to call it, must lead to a redesign of business structures to create more equity. And equally, as Keneisha has just highlighted, the events industry must seek to improve equity and inclusion throughout its value chain. There are no more excuses. Globally, we have a window of opportunity to shape the recovery of our economies and societies, to build a new system that honors the dignity of every human being. Placing social justice at the heart of recovery and prioritizing equity will be one of the defining factors of a more just and resilient future. It's also worth remembering that the UN Sustainable Development Goal number 10 is to reduce inequality within and among countries. Before the onset of the pandemic, income inequality was falling, and the Gini index fell in 38 out of 84 countries. But since the onset of the pandemic, this progress has been completely arrested, and most vulnerable groups are being hit the hardest in the global pandemic, and the recession is likely to drastically reduce the amount of resource toward global development. In terms of D, E, and I, there are some global insights and initiatives I would like to share, but I must caveat it by being clear that they are not events industry specific, and therein lies our task. But as a task force, we can amplify these initiatives by taking inspiration from the work being done at a high level by global organizations and tailor it to better suit our industry and its particular needs. Recently, the global firm PwC released their multi-year global cross-industry survey exploring what diversity and inclusion programs organizations actually have in place and the impact that they have on the employee experience. The survey covered 25 different industries from 40 countries with 3,000 respondents. Some insights from that survey include that employees, customers, and investors increasingly demand that the organizations they do business with model values of equity and inclusion. Organizations are investing at unprecedented rates in DE&I programs, with 76% now saying it is a value or priority. But despite this heightened commitment, organizations still have progress to make in designating DE&I as an important topic and to execute programs that meet these objectives, with a third of respondents indicating that they still view diversity as a barrier to progression in their organizations. 79% of leadership engagement on DE&I remains at the basic or emerging level. And only 26% of organizations have DE&I goals for leaders, and only 17% have a C-level suite role in place, while nearly 30% have no DE&I leader. And I would say that this survey is really quite comprehensive and well worth a read. I'll just pop the link into the chat if I'm able to multitask for you now, but it really is worth taking a look, particularly because when you take the survey, you can also, it'll help you to benchmark where your own organization is in terms of organizations in the same region and industry as you are in. So it's really worth it. The other example I'd like to share is an initiative that is specifically designed to drive impact. And the World Economic Forum has launched a new economy and society platform. And this is different because it convenes a high-level community of chief diversity and inclusion officers, and almost 100 CDIOs from around the world and across 20 different industries come together in monthly virtual meetings. And this drives impact. It drives an exchange between those leaders, looking at trends, risks, and opportunities. It amplifies the most cutting-edge ideas to redesign the workplace structures for more equity. It helps to develop a vision, strategies, and tools to proactively embed equity into the recovery and future of our economies and societies. And it's really pushing individual and collective action for DE&I. And the platform really takes an integrated and holistic approach to this work, to social justice, and really aims to tackle exclusion, bias, and discrimination related to race, gender, ability, sexual orientation, and all other forms of human diversity. And thinking a little bit closer to home, if I may, at IMEX, we have had our own DE&I squad for over 5 years now, made up of employees who felt this was an important aspect of our business, something that we needed to actively do more to make sure that we were a more inclusive and diverse business. This squad has gone from just having informal conversations between passionate staff members to actually outlining a series of goals for us as a business. And we've got 3 goals for 2021: to create a diverse and inclusive culture, things like removing all the identifying information from a CV, very easy to do, really what we would call a blind review. We're also working toward having a green tick system in our HR systems, which means that anybody who meets the criteria for the goal will be, for the role, should I say, will be called for interview. They're small steps, but they really amount to something when done right, to make our shows more inclusive, particularly in terms of accessibility. What does that mean in a physical show environment? Trying to ensure that we're promoting inclusion and diversity through all our communication, working on closed captioning, alt text labels, and also our designs that we use so that they are clear and easy to use. Looking at color and the use of that design material so it is much more accessible. And again, they're really small steps, but they work toward creating a more inclusive company that in turn organizes more inclusive events.
Thank you. I think we all thank you for the thought that you put into and that research that you brought forward. I know you mentioned that some of that wasn't our industry specific, but it applies everywhere, and that'll jumpstart our work by having that. So thank you. Thank you very much for that. Hi, Derrick.
Hello, Tammy.
Hi, I'm coming to you next.
Good.
You had a very powerful presentation at EIC Advance, and it was about inclusion starts with I. Wondering if you could expand on the significance of that and how each of us need to take meaningful steps and actions to make sure that we're creating inclusive event environments and just overall. So would you mind expanding on that a little for us?
Definitely. So my personal philosophy around taking a journey, that story starts and ends ultimately with us as the individuals. Every day we are presented with new opportunities to grow, to ultimately make a difference in this world. And within our ecosystem of meetings and events, we truly have that power to foster global and economic social transformation within communities. But before we get to that level of impact, we have to reflect on ourselves, on our blind spots, on our own biases. Those are the things that ultimately stand in the way and keep us from keeping diversity at the focal point of everything that we do. We're very blessed because through our community efforts in the meetings and events industry, and through experience design, and through people-focused strategy, we ultimately educate, connect, and foster growth and development within so many lives, within so many industries. And just imagine touching people's lives in that moment that we are ultimately creating for them, and them going back to their own communities and impacting them through the education, the connections that they make in these experiences. We have the true power to help evolve our world in so many ways. And it's important for us to take that moment of reflection so that we can be better, and then we can then ultimately bring that best to the participants in these experiences that we ultimately create. Diversity should be a part of everyone's DNA, a part of every association, a part of every organization. Ultimately, we're supposed to be here to push for this evolution, but it starts with us. It starts with us stepping forward and driving awareness. It starts with us stepping forward and being transparent. It starts with us stepping forward and admitting that we just don't know and seeking out answers. A peer of mine once said, you have to be hungry. You gotta be hungry, Derrick. You gotta seek out what you want and go for it. And that same notion applies in this D&I space, diversity, equity, and inclusion space. We have to be hungry. We have to seek out these opportunities to ultimately liberate experiences. And liberation is I think, the word that truly ultimately goes beyond diversity, equity, and inclusion, and needs to be a top priority for all of us personally and professionally. So when we talk about liberating experiences, it goes beyond equity, because ultimately there are still barriers in the way when we talk about equity and inclusion. There's places of privilege that exist within our world, and we need to seek to remove these barriers that keep people from ultimately having a unique and customized and personalized and uniquely identified experience. Opportunities for people to learn, to share, to contribute in an equal way, without privilege, without these barriers standing in our way. And so when we think about inclusion, and again, inclusion starts with it starts with each of us. I'm very fortunate to be with Tally Management Group at this moment as their Chief Diversity Officer. And of course, my background isn't in diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's in experience design and meeting development. But my organization has a focus in and has asserted this as a priority. And I've stepped up to the plate to ensure that we drive this effort and that it becomes a part of our DNA structure for not just Tally management, but also our clients. Within the association management world, we have the unique opportunity to touch so many industries, so many people, so many organizations, so many associations. And with that ability, we have the opportunity to impact broader. And it started with me. It started with me stepping forward and saying, hey, we have an opportunity here. It started with our senior team reflecting upon themselves. It started with our CEO, Greg Talley, taking a stance and stepping forward and saying, no, we will not do anything here. And putting the processes and the steps in place to ensure that we as an organization, we're investing in ourselves, we're investing in our team, we're investing in our community, and we're investing in our clients and everyone that touches them. And ultimately, that goes back to the notion that we in this events community have the ability to truly drive change and evolution within the spaces of our world. And so again, when it comes back to talking about inclusion, and inclusion starts with I, it truly ultimately does, because it's how we wake up. It's how we view the world. It's how we have that hunger to learn and to embrace change and to embrace each other and to step forward and ultimately say, hey, I don't know, but I'm curious to know. I want to know. Help me through this. And so when I did that presentation for EIC, and I'm so grateful to have that opportunity, it allowed me to, again, broaden my own personal development and learn from everyone that participated in it just as much as I contributed to it.
There's so much. I'm going to unpack a little bit here. First of all, I think, would you agree that the I part is really the hard work? It's because if you can do the hard work yourself, then you can bring your best self into your companies and organizations.
100%.
And the other thing that I think was very powerful, you said a lot of powerful things, was also about companies and organizations. It's not about necessarily checklists that you're going to say, I did this, or Keneisha, you talked about it's not a trend, but this is about transformation of companies and organizations where it becomes deeply embedded in your culture, where it's not an option. It's just, if you're going to work for me, you are going to make a contribution here. So I think that's amazing. You know, we have a little bit of time, and what I was wondering, and this is not planned, so I'm going to warn all of you, but just before we go to Q&A and Amy, is there anything that anybody on the panel would like to talk about specifically how this topic applies to meeting design? So if somebody wanted to take away and said, okay, I want to take all this good thought, but how does that apply to my specific meeting or event? Anybody on the panel here have any thoughts about, here's a couple of things you really need to think about?
Well, I think from a practical perspective, you have to look at the business case of, again, the changing demographics and understand if your organization wants to compete, one, within this new global atmosphere or arena. Two, are you really meeting the needs of your actual constituents? So what I mean by that is, you know, your constituents are frankly representative of whatever your mission is. So if your mission is to be a diverse and inclusive organization, then do you really refine that? Do you really reflect that? And then I think the other piece is you're cheating yourself if you are not allowing things to be more inclusive because you're lacking innovation. So one thing I would say is ensure that you have a diverse vendor list to make sure you're being competitive with the newest technology, the newest creative minds, and you're getting thoughts that are not necessarily within your wheelhouse that you traditionally are used to. Second, I think you have to, again, look at the business case. How much money, just to be honest, this is money. How much money per membership are you leaving on the table by not being accessible to different groups of people, particularly those people whom, again, are underrepresented in your group, but may be more represented in other groups? And I think you have to look at the demographics. This is not just me talking. The demographics between 18 and 26 are already minority majority. So if your organization is not inclusive, you're missing opportunities for you to be competitive. You're missing opportunities to foster innovation. And frankly, you are creating a space where you're going to be irrelevant in the coming years, because if you don't grow and expand and broaden your base, your business is not going to grow, which means your membership would deplete and your mission would be irrelevant and you wouldn't cease to exist. That's just a fact. I think that the last piece I would say is if you are talking to a group of people and you appear to be in an archaic way of thinking because you haven't accepted the differences that are in your face today, you frankly have put yourself on an island. And the only thing that is around you is salt water, and you have open wounds. So you will be stinging while everybody else is singing and praising the new, I'm just being honest, the new group, the new innovation, the new cash flow, the growth of membership, and you being relevant for not just today, but for the next generation of thinkers and people who are interested in what the work that you do.
Well, I love what Jason just said, and Derrick and Keneisha, everybody had such relevant things to add to this, and Natasha's perspective. But as I mentioned in my opening comments, and Jason hit on it again right now, I'm so proud that the nonprofit association world is really, because we all know sometimes we're the last ones to do something. We're just slow to change. You know, our associations just creep along sometimes, not because we don't want to, but just because it's difficult. And I'm so thrilled that on a lot of CEO roundtable discussions I've been on with other association CEOs, they're really embracing this. And that's why I said they're looking all the way down to their mission and their vision and going, wait, is this really in the inclusiveness we want in our organization? Are we even relevant in saying the right things right now and leading out with these old vision and missions? And it is trickling down to that next layer of conversation of bottom line and how it hits and how it affects. And I think people are embracing this so much quicker than they ever did. And I love that about it, because for once, perhaps the association arena could lead out with something and be the leaders in this and show the swift turn we're taking to really embrace this to our core. And I think it's critical.
That's great. Is there anyone else that wanted to just make anything we missed that would be helpful to the audience, again, about how that's something they could apply right back to their meeting? Did we miss anything?
Yeah, I mean,
Derrick,
I'll jump in here, and I mean, there's 5 points that I think clear takeaways that you can do right now. First and foremost, think about your marketing. Think about how you portray yourself online, how you portray your meetings and events. People want to see themselves in how we market things, whether it's our organizations through membership or even our events themselves. So ensure that we are focused on authenticity in our marketing, first and foremost, in our messaging, and also visually through pictures. The second thing is registration, being able to quantify that data and ensure that that we're moving beyond just the food preferences and the pronouns and accessibility needs, but we're leveraging that information to really create these personas and understand the individuals, the people who are coming to our experiences, so that we can understand who's not there, and then start seeing what barriers have we put in place to keep others from actually participating. The virtual world has allowed us to diversify our audiences so much. We're now all global. And so it's taking that same mindset and applying it now to in-person experiences. The third thing that I wanted to hit on was the event design. And obviously, I think multiple people have articulated this today, but just ensuring that we are designing experiences for everyone, and that we're having inclusive practices. We're using these tools and resources out there like the HRC Equality Index, and we're going through the RFP process, understanding community vendors that are locally supported, and tapping into those resources in those local areas so that we leave places better than where we eventually came into them. And then finally from there, it's just the ultimate, we have to reflect on ourselves as professionals and our purpose within this industry as a whole. And I think that has evolved and changed. We've seen even the evolution of us stepping into the space of producing. But now, even more so than anything else, I feel like we are the true drivers for change within communities on a broader scale. And when we take that notion and we hold that as our North Star and look at how everything we touch applies to other people's lives, I think that then ultimately makes the planning process more thoughtful and at the very end of the day, more impactful.
Excellent. Excellent. Anyone else? Did I miss anyone or? Okay. That's great, because I think we're all sitting back and thinking, I've been to lots of meetings where they said one thing and did another, right? So yeah, so this is a very powerful discussion. So Amy, we're going to turn it back to you, and just any other thoughts that you have about this task force and how we're really going to hold ourselves accountable for making long-term changes in this space.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. Thanks, everyone. So many really great thoughts. And, I was just listening to all of you and thinking, as Tammy's saying, jotting down notes and thinking about, how are we going to move this forward? We learn every day as we go through when we open ourselves up to really important conversations like this. So I'm really grateful. I think one of the things that I'll start with sharing just for everybody, all the participants and the panelists, is that just a reminder that when you think about what EIC represents as a global federation, right? One of the things that we've been really kind of honing in on is, we've learned a lot through the pandemic about equity, and it's exposed so many vulnerabilities and so many opportunities for us all as part of a global society. And, what can we do through the power of this global federation, right? So we're thinking about aggregating and curating information and making it accessible so people understand that they have a place to go to begin a journey, to better understand the learnings that they need to help them do a better job, help them grow their career pathway, help them, really be an advocate for change, no matter, what it is that they're passionate about. And so EIC as this global body is really an aggregator and a curator in helping to create context. And we thought, there are so many organizations that are members of ours and partners of ours that have been doing fantastic work in this space of equity, inclusion, accessibility, inclusivity for a very long time. And at the same time, we had to ask ourselves, are we having an impact? Like, are we doing enough? Are we reaching the broadest audience? Are we really, truly helping people understand how to indeed create a welcoming environment, and not just on site, right? We, as Tina's mentioning, we're all organizations that create community 365 days a year. We offer community 365 days a year. So how can we ensure that the communities that we're creating feel indeed welcoming and open for everyone? And so that's why we thought, well, I think this is the right time to indeed appoint a task force under the Center for Sustainability and Social Impact to look at, the systemic racism that we've been grappling with for far too long, and thinking about if we approached it in this way and we create the framework that Jason and Tina spoke of, and we hold ourselves accountable and we measure our impact over time, will we actually start to see progress and be able to measure and share progress? And that's one of the things that excites me most about the work that we're doing and the way we're approaching this task force. We're not just saying we're going to stay together and really work together for this period of time. We're going to be convening and sharing and asking ourselves tough questions as we go through space and time. This isn't just about this task force and what it accomplishes in the next 6 to 8 months. we really tried to convene a truly global body and a really diverse body to have this open and generous conversation about what we can do. And I agree, you know, with Keneisha saying is, you know, so many of us grew up, you know, not really connected to the history of the civil rights movement and understanding it the way we indeed should understand it, right? And so we're all kind of on this journey independently, trying to learn and grow and to show up more prepared to be an ally, more prepared to have a really meaningful conversation about what we can do to make room for, you know, all the voices that we need to make room for. And so, you know, for me personally, I think this is a great opportunity for us all to really be vulnerable and ask ourselves, you know, how we can do more to help drive change. The task force itself, you know, again, just to add on to what Jason and Tina were saying, we're going to create this framework, but we're actually going to be asking the industry a lot of really important questions. So it'll be very open and very collaborative as we start to think about, well, going way beyond the normal channels that we use to deliver surveys and ask generous questions, to try to get the broadest reach and to bring people into this conversation beyond, you know, our members and perhaps people that are really aware of the work that we're doing. And then we're going to take it all back and really collaborate on the framework. And then think about, well, now that we have this framework, we have these tools, how do we help people understand on a really personal level how to activate them as champions within their own organizations? So I think it's going to be a really incredible couple of months as we start to see this all come together. And I'm really thankful for all of you, Tina and Jason, for chairing it, and all of the participants who are on this panel today are also members of this task force, and, you know, bringing your hearts and your minds to this work, and for all that you've done, you know, to help us come to the place where we are, where we're really ready to lean into this. So happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about the work that we're doing. And, you know, again, we're thinking about it very much as a journey as opposed to a period of time, as in, you know, as individuals and as organizations, and as, quite frankly, as an industry. You know, we've had an opportunity to really say, as an industry, are we really living our values the way we suggest that we do?
That's great. I'm just, as you said, Amy, I'm looking really quickly through the Q&A. There was a question, which there's a lot of good questions on here, so I'm gonna just grab one. This could be anybody could answer this one. Can somebody give a few more examples of how people can step forward themselves? Any more, if you're not on the task force, like what's a couple more things that somebody can do to step forward? What actions would you recommend? Anyone want to grab that one?
I think that, you know, some very practical things to step forward in. If you're in a room at your corporation, and if your board meeting or your committee or your department is not reflective of the global community, then you need to look at yourself and figure out how can I change that? And it's not in a way, again, to take someone else's job. It is in a way of being inclusive to reflect your consumer base and what the actual current demographic state to be. I think that the second piece is, if you're in a room with decision makers whom see diversity as pulling out their favorite Black person or favorite Asian person or favorite Hispanic or woman or whomever, and they really don't have any power, they don't have a budget, they don't have a title, but they're put in front as a model or a mannequin, and you know that's wrong, then you need to speak up and ask the questions. Then if they are vice presidents, if they are directors, why don't they have a budget? I'm a director, I have a budget. Well, what are my responsibilities? Where are my KPIs on the scorecard? Those are some things that you can begin to speak up. I think the last piece that you can do right now is to lead with data. I always caution people not to make emotional decisions. Go get the data and see for yourself. and then build your business plan based off data that is very public. If you put it in the internet, it's very public. There's nothing, MMGY Global, the Nielsen study, all those organizations have free data you can go on and get by yourself and educate yourself. And I think that once you get the data and make business decisions with that are kind of married into your KPIs of other things that you do within your corporation, then I think you'll be able to see the business case. Not only is it the right way, but it's the right way for the future and positioning your organization to be relevant in the next generation.
And so I want to take this on kind of a personal level, and how can we individually step forward in this space? And that's reflecting upon our own circles. Over the summer, I took an opportunity with this civil unrest and this the magnification of the systemic inequalities within our country to do a reflection upon myself and see who was in my circle and who wasn't. I realized I didn't have any, as a gay Black man, I didn't have any trans friends in my network. And I felt that that was important. I felt like that community was being also attacked. And I didn't have people to talk to that shared that life. And so it was important for me to seek out that opportunity. So I literally posted on Facebook, I'm looking for anyone that can connect me to this community. And I got a large number of responses, a large number of connections, and made some great friends in this very socially distanced world. But that was me taking the initiative to do that reflection upon myself. Because ultimately, when you really truly think about diversity, it makes us all better. When you combine thoughts that aren't of your own, you produce an outcome that's something greater than what your mind could produce separately. So again, I think when we think about inclusion and diversity and DEI and this evolution of our space of humanity to liberate experiences, it starts with us and the reflection that we have, and ensuring that our own circles aren't made up of people that look like us or act like us, that it's made up of people from diverse cultures, diverse backgrounds, and ultimately we will then learn and become better because of that.
Very powerful. You know, there was a couple of questions on this, and it's something we did not touch on. So I'm wondering if anybody feels, that they want to respond to this one. And it is really about discrimination around ableism. So the discrimination in favor of able-bodied persons as a part of this work. Does anybody have any thoughts on that and how that is going to be brought into this work?
So not to keep talking, but I will. It's the people first mentality. You have to put people first. So it's people who are able-bodied. We have to change, again, our mindset, the way that we articulate. Instead of saying you guys, it's about people. Not everyone is a guy in this circle. So, I mean, those are the types of things that we have to think through as we articulate in dialogue. But even when we think about accessibility concerns, when we first started in this virtual, really focusing on virtual, how many people noticed that we were not really talking about closed captioning or signing or font sizes or color schemes? Because again, there's this whole world. How many walls have we built to keep people from our experiences? And so again, this is the reflection part that we have to take a step back and look at every aspect of our meeting design, for example, of our culture, and see where we have put barriers in place. Again, back to liberating experiences for everyone.
I think that is a great way to close this out. Amy, I'm going to hand it back to you because I think we're at the top of the hour here.
Yeah, Thank you, Tammy, and thank you, everyone. Derrick and Keneisha, Jason, Tina, and Natasha, great job, and thank you for being part of this conversation. We have quite a bit of programming coming up over the next day and a half in recognition of GMID. And again, look forward to just staying connected with all of you and listening and learning as we go through space and time, all in an effort to really ensure that we have used this time together over the past 12 months where we've been on a bit of pause to really understand what is it that we need to carry forward with us to help make us stronger, more relevant, and help, ultimately ensure this industry is better understood as a catalyst for change, as an industry that serves and lifts up communities and creates meaningful pathways and creates equitable environments and opportunities. And so, that is definitely something to be really inspired about, because I think we have tremendous capacity to, when we listen, when we're present, when we commit to this individual journey to learn and grow, to have a really, really important impact. So thank you all. And I look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you for that, Amy. And that concludes our webinar. On behalf of the Events Industry Council, I would like to thank our whole Equity Task Force once more for all of your important work. For live attendees, the EIC will be sending you your CE within 1 week. This webinar will be available for playback on the EIC YouTube channel. And if you missed EIC Advanced last year, you can access its content on demand through our EIC collections, available starting April 8th. This webinar will now end. Thank you, everyone.
Great job, everyone.